Hey, NBT Nation. Hey, coming at you on a random pop up live. It's a pop up live here in NBT Nation. It's a beautiful Saturday fall morning here in coastal Mississippi. It was a crisp 40 degrees this morning. Nice, beautiful day outside, super sunny. Hopefully, it is beautiful in whatever part of the world you are in today. Wanted to get together, NBT Nation, and talk about a subject that comes up commonly if you're in the training business at all, whether you're a full time trainer or do you just do it every once in a while as part of many other tasks. Here's a scenario. Here's a scenario that often unfolds. You're sitting there, you're working on a whole bunch of trainings, you're busy 8 to 5 all day long. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I need you to put something together quick. Just throw something together. Just whatever you got, but we got to roll out this whole new training." What? It's as if it is as if they think you just sit around all day hoping that training request comes in and you don't have a million other things to do. It's wildly disruptive. And if your training team is already maxed out, if everybody's busy, or if you're a one person show and you're already kind of, up to your hiney and alligators, that, hey, just throw something together. We got to do this new thing. That can be, oh my gosh, so much stress. And it can really lead to burnout. It could lead to poor quality training if you just throw something together. It's bad all the way around. It's not good for you. It's not good for the audience, the people who actually need the training. And it's not good for the organization. So, with that in mind, my friends, we're going to talk about how do you set boundaries on training? How do you set boundaries on what you can and cannot do as a trainer or a training team? And how do you respectfully push back on those leaders? That's what we're talking about today here in this pop-up live. If you're going to find this, if you find this interesting, find it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know that you're here, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so that we can keep making great free content like this for you. So I've been there a million times myself, my friends. Hey, can we get this training? And it's either from a senior leader or it's from maybe a field manager who's, oh, we just need to throw this together. And I'm telling you, as a trainer, we want to help. Our nature, if we're especially if you're in a full-time training role, our nature is to help and respond and solve problems. And especially if it's maybe something new, the temptation is, hey, let me dive in. Let me try to work on this cool new thing even though I got 1,000 other things over here I'm trying to do. And again, it leads to burnout. It leads to just throwing stuff together. It's just bad all the way around. So here, my friends, is how we set some boundaries so that we can push back and we can really serve the needs of everybody in the organization, to include ourselves. So, all right, first tip. First tip up, how do you set some boundaries around training of what is possible and how do you push back when something isn't possible? First off, as a trainer, you need to be realistic and practice emotional intelligence. Be realistic and practice emotional intelligence. I've already started to hit on this. Be realistic. What can you do and can't you do? What is possible for your team? What is possible given your resources, your skill sets? And fight that urge to just say yes to everything. Sometimes we got to say no. Now, I will say I did do a video on the channel here recently of how do you speed up the training requests, because sometimes we're the bottleneck. Sometimes you got to say no, and you got to be realistic. The other piece is you got to practice emotional intelligence. If you and your team are already going 1,000 miles an hour and you're already maxed out in terms of workload, and you get one more request, the emotional intelligence piece, if we're not mindful of that, we can get defensive. We can get a barrier, instantly say no to everything. And yeah, we are the gatekeeper. We are the standard bearer, what is not possible. And we should be that line. But sometimes when we get that request and if we respond emotionally, oh God, I can't believe it. They're asking for this again. And we get all amped up. We're not thinking. we're not practicing good judgment, good discernment. We aren't able to hear that request and really guide, especially the senior leaders in the organization, counsel them. We're not able to respond professionally if we give in to the emotional response. So practice good emotional intelligence and be realistic of what is and is not possible. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, I mentioned this also in my video about how to speed up the turnaround time on trainings so that you can get more trainings planned, designed, and developed more quickly. Have standard meetings with leadership. Have those standard standing meetings with leadership. That's going to prevent you from getting taken off, get these requests, getting ambushed with these requests, but it's also going to help you to have that dialogue back and forth. It's going to help you to advise and counsel them. It's going to help you so when they get a cool new idea, you already are having these running discussions. It also helps them to know and understand you as a trainer. It helps them to know and understand training in general. It gives you a chance to have some discussions. I can assure you, senior leaders are not sitting around going, it takes 4 hours to design and develop every hour of classroom training. Oh, it takes 6, 7 hours to put together a really cool new e learning module. Oh, they don't know that, and they shouldn't know that. That's not fair to expect them to know that. It's easy to kind of bang on leaders, but that's not reasonable to expect a CEO of a firm, a managing director of a firm to even know or care about that. But if you have those standing meetings, it gives you a chance to educate them. It gives you a chance to have that discussion back and forth. It gives you a chance to prove yourself, to earn their trust, to earn their respect. And it gives you a chance to really work together as a partnership to really be that advice and counsel to them. So have those standard meetings. That is an important component of how you can set boundaries and push back when you need to. If you have that dialogue, you don't want that to happen. You don't want the first time you really interface with the managing director of your firm to be when you're telling them no to something. Trust me, not going to go over good, not going to go over big. So have that running dialogue. All right. Tip number three, and this one is a real practical one. It is going to naturally build some boundaries around what is possible inside your organization. Have a standardized calendar of the trainings that you offer, whether it's a full program, individual session, virtual events, in classroom, when new e learning modules are likely to be dropping. All of the learning that happens in your organization, commit that to a standardized calendar that everybody in the organization, from frontline users to senior leaders, everybody agrees to it. You start to document that in a calendar. That is going to then clearly communicate what the training team is doing, what they're already working on, what is coming down the pike. It also helps that when they say, "Hey, I got this new thing. Can you just squeeze this into the workload?" You can show them, you want me to throw together this new training workshop next week, but next week we already have this thing scheduled. So no, I can't do that. Now I could do it here, or I could do it here, I could do it here, but I can't do it next week because on the calendar we already have XYZ plotted out. Have that standardized calendar, super useful. Publicize it, communicate it, make it easy to find, easy to understand. And I'll tell you, that will naturally put some boundaries around what is possible. And when those new requests come in, it gives you a discussion point to talk about. Number four on the list, have regular reviews of the training needs in your organization. Have regular reviews of the training needs in your organization. Maintain communications with the frontline users, frontline managers, those senior leaders that you're meeting with regularly. Develop feedback loops, surveys, regular conversations, widgets that you answer questions on a SharePoint site. However you do it, what are the training needs of the organization? So then that way, if you have a standardized calendar that comes and the leadership is approved and they've shared with you, here are the training needs of the organization, You can then say, when they come and say, hey, we got this new thing. Okay, is that new thing in terms of training need, is that more important than the established needs? Is that equally important as the training needs, or is that less important? Is it more equal or less to what we've already agreed upon as the needs? Now, I can tell you from a lot of years of doing this, sometimes those new needs are more important, and it's an emergent need that you do need to pivot on and you do need to kind of bend and flex with. That's why it's so important to stay emotionally intelligent, not just viscerally react to any new request, so that you can really analyze and discern that this need is more important than what we've already agreed to. I'm going to make a pivot. But guess what? If you have an established list of needs of the organization that you then put into a standardized calendar that you're regularly talking to everybody in the organization about, when there's a new need and the senior leadership says that need is nice, but it's not equal to the current needs or more important than the current needs. Okay, cool. I'll get to it when I get to it. It's just that simple. I'm not going to shift everything we're doing today to respond to this thing because everybody agrees. It's nice. We need to start thinking about it, but maybe that becomes a next quarter issue or next half or next year, whatever. So think about those training needs and really keep the dialogue going so that you understand them, and then use that framework. Here's the current needs. Here's the new need. Is this new need more important, equal, or less important than the existing needs? And then you can use that as a framework to move forwards or push back if need be. All right. Right. NBT Nation Random Saturday Pop-Up Live. All right. How do you set some boundaries on training so that you maintain the quality of it, you protect the organization, and you protect yourself from burnout? Focus on the outcomes of those programs or sessions. So when somebody comes to you, whether they're a senior leader or just a field manager or a frontline user, says, "Hey, we need this training. Could you just squeeze this in somewhere? Just throw something together. Use what you already got." You can focus on the outcome. Help me to understand, what is it you're trying to achieve here? What is the outcome? What is the new skill? What is the behavior you're trying to start or stop? What is the skill? What is the tangible result of this training effort? Sometimes when you get them to communicate that, I want them to now be able to do blah, blah, blah. Well, number one, you can then say, well, to do blah, blah, blah is a new need. How does that relate to our existing needs using the framework I just discussed? Or sometimes when they vocalize, I would like them to stop doing blah, 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 or start doing blah, 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 or do whatever at a higher level. Once they verbalize that, you might realize it's not really a training problem. You might realize this could be a management or leadership issue. This could be a business system or process issue. The business system, there's not enough computers, there's not enough resources, whatever, or just the process is wonky. Well, that ain't a training problem, because sometimes people just say, hey, we need a training, throw something together, and they don't do that analysis piece. And by getting them to focus on the outcome, you may discern that training isn't even needed in the first place. So focus on outcomes, not just the original request. All right. Excuse me there, NBT Nation. All right. Next tip, established standards of quality training. This is a really useful way to help set some boundaries and push back on training requests when it's appropriate to do so. Establish in your organization what quality training looks like, feels like, sounds like, and tastes like. Document that, bullet point it out. In our organization, a good training program or session will meet these standards. Excuse me. It will meet these standards. Get that sign off from your senior leadership, field users, managers, get everybody in the organization buys in on that. Then when you get that hey, can you throw this training together? Then you could respectfully say, I can do that. But to do that, well, I'm not going to be able to meet these standards. You want me to do this big, giant, huge program next week? I can't do that. Goodness. Sorry there, NBT Nation. You want me to do this big, giant program next week? I could rush and throw something together, but it's not going to meet these standards. Are we sure we really want to do this? Having those standards in place, good Lord. Having those standards in place has saved me a bunch of times from rushing, throwing stuff together, cutting corners. And it also helps to communicate to the person requesting, hey, I could do what you're asking, but it's going to be really thrown together. I'm going to have to cut corners. I'm not really going to be able to develop a lot of cool new tools and, things. My PowerPoints are going to be pretty basic. I can do what you're asking, but it's really not going to be an effective outcome. Have standardized standards of quality training. Document those out, get buy-in from everybody. And then you can use those as a way to set some boundaries and push back. All right, here's a great helpful phrase. If we move forwards with this request, can you help me deprioritize the existing tasks or the existing workload? Can you help me deprioritize the existing workload or reprioritize the existing workload? So here's how this works. A leader comes to you, oftentimes a senior leader, and says, hey, I just need you to do this thing. Here's this idea. I read a book. I listened to a podcast. Now I want us to start doing blah, blah, blah. Cool. Great. Here is the standard calendar that we've already mapped out. Here is my needs, my understanding of the needs of the organization based on our conversations. I'm happy to do this new thing because you're wanting me to do it. That's great. What do I need to take off this list? If I do this, that means I can't do this. Which this do you want me to get rid of? Or how do we shift the order? In other words, if you have 5 things on your list and they want you to add a 6th, that's cool, but I can't do it. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough people. I don't have the resources. I'm already busy doing a bunch of other things. You want this new thing? Which one of these do you want to get rid of? Or how do we shift the priority? Or you want this one done next week. Maybe we shift this to next quarter, and that makes room for this. There's lots of different ways to kind of move the pieces around, but help me to either reprioritize or deprioritize what we're already doing. That helps you to prevent burning out the team. That helps you checking and balancing yourself so that you don't overcommit and then burn out your team and burn out yourself. And then that puts the responsibility back on the leader. Hey, I want to do everything you're asking me, but I can't. Again, you want me to do this new thing. What existing thing you want me to get rid of? I'm happy to reprioritize. You tell me which one of these you want to move around, shift around, get rid of. If we move forward to this request, can you help me deprioritize or reprioritize the workload? Really useful phrase. And then it's on them. If they say get rid of this other program, cool. You've just been told by your boss to get rid of that other program, and now you have cover. You've got a little backup when somebody says, how come you're not doing that thing? Hey, the boss told me to get rid of that so we could do this other new thing. And now everybody's happy. The organization wins, the leader wins, the audience, the people being trained wins, and you protect your team. All right. Here's another tip. I've had to learn this. Be ready with solutions and counteroffers. Be ready with solutions and counteroffers. This is why having some emotional intelligence when you get that request, hey, we got this new thing, forget everything you're doing, go work on this other new thing. Being calm in that moment so you can think. This is why you have the standing meetings. This is why you have the standard calendar. This is why you regularly review the training needs. This is why you establish quality training standards so that when you get that request, you can say, hey, listen, you want me to do this. It's not possible. but maybe I can do this. How does that sound? I'll give you a practical example. You are a training team, you're maxed out, you do in person, you do virtual, you do e learnings, full service training team, you're doing guides, infographics, websites, podcasts, craziness. They want you to do a worldwide, fly everybody in from around the world, get a hotel conference room, and do a week long program. And they want you to roll it out next week. Huh? And this is for a multi-billion dollar, it's for like 1,000 people. So 1,000 people in a hotel room or a hotel conference room by next week, go. Well, number one, that's just not even humanly possible. But even if it was, I mean, imagine how that is going to detonate your current workload. You're going to have to stop the presses unless you got 1,000 trainers just sitting around waiting for something to do. For most training teams, that will be a full, all hands on deck effort to throw that together. What if you come back in the moment because you're being level headed, because you understand the current training needs, because you have the running dialogue with your leaders, because you talk to frontline users and frontline managers, because you have standards of quality training, because you've been building that trust and credibility throughout the working relationship and partnership? What if you come back and say, listen, even if we had the people power to do what you're asking, to get 1,000 people from around the world into a hotel conference room by next week, it doesn't even make sense. But even if we could, how about this instead? What if next week we start rolling out some micro learning videos on this topic? Start rolling those out globally. The week after that, we put together some workshops in a box for the field managers to do with their teams, and they could do it as part of their stand-up meeting. They could do it as a Friday lunch and learn type thing, but the field manager can start to deliver some training that we put together for you, but they'll do that the week after next, because that we can kind of put something together pretty quickly. The third week, we can roll out a guide that is new and helps them on this topic. The fourth week, then we'll do whatever. And then the fifth week, we will have planned regional meetings for each region around the world. We'll put the whole schedule together. We'll build the content. We'll put it all together that the field managers roll those meetings out in the fifth week. What do you think? Now, your leader may say, no, I want everybody on an airplane next week and in a hotel conference room. And then, okay, you deal with that. But they may say, you know what, I like that even better, because now we're getting a wave of information coming out that buys us time to get better information gathered, to do some data analysis, to really get into what is the actual need. That gives us some time to get some feedback from frontline users, and that gets some repetition, because now we're talking about this subject over the span of 5, 6, 7 weeks, as opposed to a big one and done event. A lot of words to say. Be ready with those solutions. Be ready to barter and horse trade. Hey, I can't do that, but I could do this. Hey, I can't do what you're asking in the moment because we're already blocked because of these standardized events on the calendar, but I could do. Be flexible. Be ready to pivot. Be creative with your solutions. Be creative with the responses. Not everything has to be a classroom-based training. Not everything needs to be a big training event. Maybe a quick micro learning video. Maybe a well-written email with a link to some existing resources. Maybe an infographic. Maybe a new blog post that you share on a SharePoint site. Maybe that's enough to get a quick response out to meet that request without bogging your team down, without getting them frustrated, and without you cutting corners on the request. So be ready with those solutions. All right, we're talking about how do you set boundaries and push back respectfully on leaders when they request training. This last point, really, really important, and I'm learning this more and more as I get deeper into my learning and development career. It is so easy to get heads down and just somebody asks for a training and, ooh, I'm building a new guide. Ooh, I'm building a new program. Ooh, I'm doing a new e-learning module. Ooh, I'm recording a new video. Yeah, that's really groovy. It's really important that you standardize your processes for how you design and develop all that information, all those programs, all those responses. Really standardize the process and then track how much time it takes to execute on that process and meet those standards of quality training that I talked about a little while ago. Measure that. Know what your team does and how long it takes them to do it. Number one, as a manager, as a leader, you should be doing that anyway. If you have a training team, if you have people that report to you, even if you're a standalone one person shop and you're the trainer for the whole company, you should be standardizing your processes and tracking how long it takes you to do all this. But certainly, if you lead a team, you should be measuring how long it takes them roughly to do some of these tasks. If it's a new e-learning module, that's 14 hours. It's 10 hours. It's 5 hours. It's 1 hour. Whatever. It doesn't matter. If it's a training program, it takes this long. If it's a training session, it takes this long. If it's classroom based, it's this long. If it's virtual, it's this long. If it's a guide, it takes roughly this long. Measure all that. Measure it. And that can kind of that can maybe sometimes feel like micromanaging. It can sometimes kind of we want to focus on the creative parts of our job, but by understanding that how long it takes to do these different things, then when your senior leader comes and says, "Hey, I need you to do this thing, change everything you're doing," you can tell them that's going to take 15 hours. And you can say it truthfully and you can say it calmly. And over time, because you're having the standing meetings with them, they can start to understand, oh, that's 15 hours to put all that together. Okay. Because again, the senior leaders don't sit around thinking about how long it takes to do all this stuff. They, most people in the organization, senior leader or otherwise, the only part of training they see is the visible part. They see you in the classroom delivering, they see you online delivering, they see the end result of the module, they see the guide. That's it. Oh, it's a PowerPoint, it's 10 slides. Probably took them 5 minutes a slide. No, I had to go research it. I had to go talk to a bunch of people. I had to get this verified and approved. I had to do a round of revisions. We had to do practice sessions. That 10-page guide took whatever, 5 hours to put that together. By understanding all this, you can teach your senior leaders because they do not sit around thinking about that. And again, as I said at the beginning of this, they should not. It's not fair to expect them to know that. What we can take ownership of is teaching them that over time. And I can tell you that if you have that dialogue and if you are respectful and you prove that you can deliver results, then when you say, "Hey, I've tracked, if you want this program, it takes 3 weeks to put it together." Then they'll say, "Okay, well, then I'm not going to ask you to roll this out next week. I'll give you the 3 or 4 weeks to put it together." If they say, "Hey, I want this new e-learning module," and they already know that takes 10 hours to do, well, then you can then push back and they will understand, okay, it takes 10 hours to build that. And then you can say, "Hey, this it can be done, it cannot be done." All right. As part of that, it's really understanding what your team is doing and working on a daily basis, not just that they're doing it, but how long it takes. So if you have an instructional designer that has 2 or 3 projects that are in the works and they take 10 hours each to produce, and then somebody else comes and says, "Hey, can we stop everything and do this new thing?" You can tell them, "Hey, my team's maxed out. Help me to reorganize. Help me to reprioritize the list of what they're working on because they're maxed out." So by standardizing your processes and tracking how long it takes to do all this stuff, not only can you educate your leadership, not only can you tell them the possibilities, not only can you say, "This is what I can and cannot do," you can protect your team because you're not overburdening them. And then the last part of this is that I can assure you, if you say to a senior leader, "I cannot do that because my team is busy," what they're thinking in their head is, well, what are they working on? because again, they only see the visible part. And I can assure you, some leaders are going to start to think that can't possibly take that long. Well, what is it they actually do? And by knowing what your team is working on, knowing how long it takes, you can very easily diffuse that by communicating. It takes X number of hours to put this together. Here's what they're working on currently. Here is their current workload. I can do this instead of what you're asking for. Is that workable? And then hey, this is a new request. Is this more important, equally important, or less important than the current list of needs? Here's the current calendar. Here's what I'm hearing from the field. I know you just read this cool new book and now you want to shift and go in this new direction, but here's what I'm hearing from your managers. Are we really sure we want to reprioritize everything? Plus my team is maxed out anyway. You can start to diffuse all of those thoughts. And then you can roll up your sleeves and work together as a team to say what is possible. What can we do? What should we do? How can we go about doing it in a way that maintains the quality, helps the people it's intended to help, and doesn't frustrate the heck out of your training team? And it all starts by standardizing your processes and tracking the time it takes to do all this. So there you have it, my friends, NBT Nation. How do you set some boundaries on what is possible in your training world and in your organization and responding to these requests? You can set some boundaries by doing these different things, and it opens up the door to respectfully push back. The last thing a leader wants is somebody to go, I just can't do that. I'm too busy. They don't want to hear that. But by doing these things that I've talked about, it helps your leaders to really navigate through their requests. It helps you as a trainer to better understand their requests, and it helps everybody to come together so that the organization gets the training it needs, the people in the organization get fed, and you as a trainer don't overcommit yourself and burn yourself out. So there you have it, NBT Nation. I hope you found today's pop-up live interesting and effective and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep making this free content for you. Be sure to visit noboringtraining.com, where we have links to all of NBT Live's free videos, free resources, guides, and then a bunch of paid services and products, all designed to ensure your training doesn't suck. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you out there. Remember, training doesn't need to be cumbersome, complicated, or costly. It just needs to happen so that we can move our organizations forwards and affect those top line metrics that keep our leaders up late at night.